Chapter 18. Sane Proteins. The second step to going sane is filling a third of your plate with nutrient-dense protein. This ratio should ensure you get between 30 and 55 grams in total of protein at each meal. In general, serving size will be about as large as two of your palms. For example, a large piece of lean meat or fish, a cup and a half of cottage cheese or plain Greek yogurt, 3 eggs and a large piece of ham, 8 egg whites, or a can of tuna. It's important to aim for a minimum serving of about 30 grams of protein. If you consume less than this in a sitting, you will not enjoy all of the benefits protein has to offer. That's because when you eat 30 grams or more of protein, the concentration of a specific amino acid in your blood, called leucine, becomes high enough to cause your body to refresh and renew your lean tissue. The technical term for this is muscle protein synthesis. Your body is rebuilding itself, and without activating this mechanism at least 3 times per day, you are missing out on all sorts of metabolic benefits and risk losing about 5% of your muscle tissue per decade. This is a condition known as sarcopenia and can be thought of as osteoporosis for muscles, and is easily avoided if you take a sane approach to protein. Note, if you are physically unable to eat between 30 and 55 grams of protein in a single sitting, be sure to check out sanesolution.com for healthy whole food ways to increase the concentration of the specific amino acid leucine in your bloodstream and to enjoy all the benefits of muscle protein synthesis even with more moderate protein ingestion. While going sane, you will be consuming more nutrient-dense protein than the common recommended daily allowance. This is because the common recommended daily allowance, or RDA, is what you need to eat if your goal is to avoid malnutrition. I could be wrong, but I don't think your goal is just to avoid malnutrition. Your goal is to enjoy robust health and leanness throughout your life. To do this simply, eat 30 to 55 grams of protein in total at least 3 times per day. Aim for a daily total protein intake between 100 grams and 200 grams depending on your size and activity level. A 5-foot-tall, 110-pound sedentary woman would be fine with about 100 grams or 3 approximately 30 grams worth of protein meals, while a 6-foot-tall, 195-pound man who exercises smarter should take in about 200 grams or 4 to 5 40-gram servings of protein per day. If you follow the serving guides, tips, and recipes we'll cover shortly and expand upon on sanesolution.com and enjoy nutrient-dense protein every time you eat, you will achieve this easily and be surprised at how full you are and how much better you feel and look long-term. Researchers in the Netherlands have found that additional protein consumption results in a significantly lower body weight regain after weight loss. Note: when talking about grams of protein, keep in mind that, for example, a 200-gram serving of salmon contains about 40 grams of protein. Like most sane foods, salmon is mostly water. You are aiming for between 100 and 200 grams of protein, not 100 and 200 grams of foods containing protein. You'll be enjoying far more delicious food than that. When we talk about eating protein, many people immediately think of meat. Nutrient-dense meat is a great source of protein. However, seafood is a wonderful source of protein. A flood of research suggests that in addition To all of the protein-related benefits already discussed, consuming seafood frequently can drop your risk of the vast majority of diseases plaguing us today. Do your best to eat seafood daily, not a few times per week, daily. This is simple because cooking seafood is a snap. Place some fish and some seasoning in a pan or baking dish and heat it. You will be delighted when you eat it. Canned seafood options such as canned salmon, tuna, and sardines require no cooking at all and provide inexpensive and portable protein. When considering protein options, it's incredibly important to keep in mind that just because a food has some protein in it does not qualify it as a useful source of protein. Not all proteins are created equal, and many of the supposed good sources of protein you hear about are about as good at meeting your protein needs as ketchup is good at meeting your non-starchy vegetable needs. Let's define concentrated sources of protein as common foods that have more calories coming from protein than from fat or carbohydrates, and whose protein can also be readily used by the body. This leaves us with 8 simple concentrated sources of protein. 1. Seafood, 51 to 94% protein. 2. Egg whites, 91% protein. Note, this isn't about fearing fat in the yolks, details coming soon. 3. White meat with or without skin, 51% to 80% protein. 4. Dark meat without skin, approximately 60% protein. 5. Low-fat cottage cheese, 60% to 85% protein. Same fat disclaimer, more on this later. 6. Low-fat plain Greek yogurt, 60 to 70% protein. 7. Lean, ideally grass-fed red meat, 51 to 75% protein. 8. Very low sugar protein powders or protein bars, greater than 70% protein. Note, protein powders and protein bars can become a minefield of insane nonsense. For more information on how to select the right protein supplements, please visit sanesolution.com. There are also a few fairly concentrated sources of protein. They're given that designation because quite a few of their calories come from fat or carbohydrate, and for plant options, they do not contain an optimal set of amino acids and are not as readily used by your body. None of these things are deal breakers, especially if the calories are coming from natural fats. Natural fats are great for you, but let's be honest, if 63% of the calories in an egg come from fat, while only 35% of its calories come from protein, eggs are not concentrated sources of protein. Again, that's fine. Eggs are sane, but it does not make sense to call something that is mostly fat or mostly carbohydrate a concentrated source of protein. Pretty good is reasonable, though. Fairly concentrated sources of protein. Dark meat poultry with skin, approximately 45% protein. Moderately fatty, ideally grass-fed, red meat, 40 to 60% protein. Eggs, 35% protein. Soybeans, 33% protein. Everything else is not even close to being a concentrated source of protein. Common dairy products other than those listed are mostly fat and sugar. Beans are mostly carbohydrate. Nuts are more than 70% fat. Again, being mostly fat or carbohydrate does not necessarily make these foods insane. It just makes it inaccurate to call them concentrated sources of protein. And that can be a problem. Focusing on nutrient-dense, concentrated sources of protein is important because if you try to get 30 to 55 grams of protein from, say, quinoa, you would have to eat way more quinoa than is healthy, or helpful. Now, about those low-fat disclaimers in the list of concentrated sources of protein. Given all the science showing that we should not fear fat, some people might get justifiably concerned when they hear anything about low-fat cottage cheese or low-fat plain Greek yogurt or lean cuts of meats or egg whites. Let's clarify. When we're talking about nutrient-dense proteins, we're talking about food with as much protein, vitamins, and minerals per calorie as possible. If you have two instances of a food that are the same in every way, except that one contains more fat than the other, for example, fat-free versus full-fat cottage cheese, divide the protein, vitamins, and minerals in a serving by the calories in a serving, and the option with less fat is the more nutrient-dense source of protein. This is not to say that the full-fat versions of these foods should always be avoided. It's to say that if your goal is to pick a food that maximizes protein, vitamin, and mineral intake, this is done by picking leaner options. Natural fats are wonderful for you, but right now we're talking about how to eat protein, not how to eat fat. We'll cover how to eat fat, to burn fat, and boost health in a moment. Speaking of nutrition-minded communities, some vegetarians and vegans may have something to say to you about protein. We'll cover the science pertaining to meat shortly, but please keep in mind that vegetarians and vegans can absolutely enjoy a satisfying, unaggressive, nutritious, and inefficient, sane lifestyle as much as anyone else. Replacing starches and sweets with non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein, whole food fats, and low fructose fruits is as healthy and slimming for herbivores as it is for omnivores. The wrinkle for vegetarians and vegans has to do with a point mentioned earlier around not all proteins being equal. One of the major reasons we need to eat protein is that we need to eat certain amino acids. Not all proteins are the same when it comes to the quality and quantity of essential amino acids they provide. Animal products provide much better amino acid profiles than plant products. Animal sources of protein are also more easily utilized by the body. Again, it is possible to consume a sane quantity and quality of protein without eating animal products. However, it is much easier if we enjoy seafood, organ meats, grass-fed red meat, poultry, lean conventional red meat, eggs, cottage cheese, and plain Greek yogurt. If these high-quality and healthy options are off the table, protein powders made from rice, pea, or hemp protein can be good substitutions. Just make sure they're not saturated with sugar. I also advise vegetarians and vegans to take a branched-chain amino acid supplement to address the suboptimal amino acid profile of plants. New heading: a sane approach to protein. Eating at least 3 30 to 55 gram servings of high quality and nutrient-dense protein per day is the second most important aspect of our sane lifestyle. High satiety protein fills you up, keeps you full, and enables your body to burn fat instead of muscle tissue. Finally, trading processed fats, starches, and sweets for nutrient-dense protein has been shown in a mountain of studies to improve nearly every aspect of your health. Donald Layman, PhD, professor of nutrition at the University of Illinois, determined that protein-rich diets can help us avoid any unhealthy muscle loss during weight loss. Increasing the proportion of protein to carbs especially helps women improve their body composition, their cholesterol and triglyceride levels, their blood sugar balance, and their satiety as they lose weight. Finally, in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Dr. Layman laid it all out. High protein, low carbohydrate diets have been found to have positive effects on reducing risk factors for heart disease, including reducing serum triglycerol, increasing HDL cholesterol, increasing LDL particle size, and reducing blood pressure. Higher protein, lower carbohydrate diets have also been investigated for treatment of type 2 diabetes with positive effects on blood sugar control, including reducing fasting blood glucose, post-meal glucose and insulin responses, and the percentage of glycated hemoglobin, or HbA1c, or as we know it, the hormonal clog. But alas, the better something is, the more vocal the misinformed extremists will be. And there is certainly some loud and misinformed extremists out there defending the traditional USDA government guidelines view of protein consumption. For instance, some misinformed individuals claim that eating a sane amount of protein hurts the kidneys and liver. This assertion is not borne out in randomized controlled testing, says experts from Harvard to Finland. On the other hand, hundreds of studies show positive health benefits and body fat loss stemming from the protein intake we're discussing. A typical report from Colorado State University cites the large body of experimental evidence that demonstrates a higher intake of lean animal protein reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, dyslipidemia, obesity, insulin resistance, and osteoporosis while not impairing kidney function. Researchers have shown that humans are optimized to get about a third of our calories from protein, which means that the so-called very high protein diets, aka 30 to 40% of total energy, are closer to the conditions that spawn our present-day genome. How could a basic part of human history harm rather than help us? Emory University researchers made this point well when they noted, "It would be paradoxical if humans should now somehow be harmed as the result of a protein intake habitually tolerated or even required by their near relatives." In speaking about one of the most informative prospective health studies of all time, the Nurses' Health Study, Walter Willett, chair of the Harvard School of Public Health, shared a finding that the group of women in the study who ate the most protein were 25% less likely to have had a heart attack or to have died of heart disease. So clearly, eating a sane amount of protein doesn't harm your heart. With such clear scientific data, why do some books and documentaries continue to paint a bleaker picture of protein? Many of these resources confuse proven health benefits with moral or environmental concerns. They also often misrepresent data from the large observational study, the China-Cornell-Oxford Project, popularized by the book The China Study. For example, the data in the study itself show the consumption of nutrient-dense fish and meat, as well as eggs, correlating with a lower incidence of heart disease, while starchy plants that cannot be eaten raw, aka that are insane, correlate with a higher incidence of heart disease. The chair of the Harvard School of Public Health, Dr. Walter Willett, remarked, "A survey of 65 countries in rural China, however, did not find a clear association between animal product consumption and the risk of heart disease or major cancers." Even T. Colin Campbell, the author of the China Study, when reporting on his own observations concerning fish consumption in China, noted that it is largely the vegetarian inland communities who have the greatest all-risk mortalities and morbidities. The point here is not to criticize sane plant-based diets. In fact, a sane lifestyle is plant-based. Your plate will be filled with mostly non-starchy vegetables, and a large chunk of your calories will come from plant fats such as cocoa, coconut, avocado, macadamia nuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds. The point is that we're talking about proven biology, not correlations, politics, or morality. Randomized controlled trials, the studies that provide the most definitive proof possible, show that health and fitness are maximized by eating water, fiber, and protein-rich foods. These foods come from both plants and animals. As Joel Fuhrman, MD, states elegantly in his article, What You Need to Know About Vegetarian and Vegan Diets, you can achieve the benefits of a vegetarian diet without being a vegetarian or vegan. So, how did the myth that protein is bad for us get started in the first place? Apparently, the myth arose from studies in which animals were fed extreme amounts of low quality sources of protein and then experienced problems. But rather than proving protein is harmful, these studies led to the discovery that until an inactive person exceeds 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight per day and from low quality sources, you will only get healthier and slimmer by enjoying additional nutrient-dense proteins. To put 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight into perspective, an inactive 150-pound person would not enter the protein risk zone until she ate 11 chicken breasts per day every day. That would total 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight and would mean that about 60% of her total calories were coming from protein. I think we can all agree that's not a good idea. Bad things happen if we eat too much of anything. Luckily, it is impossible to consistently eat too much whole food, nutrient-dense protein. Your stomach would literally explode before you did. Worrying about eating too much whole food, nutrient-dense protein is a bit like worrying about drinking too much water. Can it be done? Yes. Will we do it? No. Should we worry about it? No. But what about meat? If one listens to the mainstream media, it's hard not to come to the conclusion that something about meat must be unhealthy. While some might argue against eating meat for environmental or ethical reasons, science proves that there is nothing biologically unhealthy about nutrient-dense meat. In fact, low levels of animal protein have been associated with an increased risk of strokes. Nutrient-dense meat was a cornerstone of our diet for most of our history, and there are no randomized controlled data showing that it is unhealthy. Academic work that cautions against meat is referring to the insane heavily processed meat such as hot dogs, bologna, pink slime, and so on, or to diets in which people replace vitamin and mineral-rich foods with non-nutrient-dense meat. These works are quite right. We should not do either of those things. We should eat the most nutrient-dense food possible, and that includes many forms of high-quality seafood and high-quality meat. If you have any doubts, consider the Journal of the American Medical Association's review of 147 diet and health studies. That review found zero correlation between meat consumption and heart disease. Nutrient-dense meat is not unhealthy. In fact, it's a fantastic source of essential protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals, and it promotes hormonal health. According to researcher James O'Keefe, MD, at the Mid-America Heart and Vascular Institute, eating a good amount of nutrient-dense protein at regular intervals can help you feel satisfied, increase your metabolic rate, improve your cholesterol, as well as your insulin sensitivity, and help speed weight loss, while it also ensures you increase the quality of your nutrition and provides you with many essential nutrients. You may have also been misled by mythology suggesting that protein causes cancer. This misunderstanding comes up because high-quality protein promotes the repair and growth of cells. all cells. Therefore, if a person already has cancer, excessive protein can cause those cells to grow along with every other cell in the body. Does that mean protein caused the cancer? Not at all. As University of Illinois nutrition researcher Chris Masterjohn, PhD, notes in his review of the research related to protein and cancer, low protein diets depressed normal growth, increased the susceptibility to many toxins, killed toxin exposed animals earlier, induced fatty liver, and increased the development of precancerous lesions. The bottom line is that claims that eating protein causes cancer is like claiming that watering gardens causes weeds. Just as we don't effectively avoid weeds in our garden by depriving them of water, we don't effectively avoid cancer by depriving our body of protein. We're better served cultivating a system robust enough to ward off intruders. Fortunately, that's exactly what water, fiber, and protein-rich, sane foods do. Last but not least, you may have heard the myth that protein promotes osteoporosis. This misinformation may spring from the fact that digesting protein requires more calcium than the digestion of fat or carbohydrates. Certain individuals claim this finding shows that eating a sane amount of protein will suck calcium from your bones, but in the case of a sane lifestyle, these concerns are not valid. First, as we mentioned earlier, you are not going to eat a lot of protein. You are eating the normal amount of protein humans ate historically. Second, with the sane eating plan, you have no need to grab calcium from your bones since your non-starchy vegetable intake provides at least 150% more calcium than the typical US diet. For example, green leafy vegetables are excellent sources of calcium. Calorie for calorie, spinach provides nearly twice as much calcium as reduced fat milk. Third, protein digestion does not negatively affect bones if the intake of the mineral phosphorus is increased, and sane eating does exactly that. Finally, while more protein does increase the need for calcium, it also increases your body's ability to absorb calcium. When more protein is taken in, your body automatically makes better use of calcium. Studies show that a sane amount of protein actually increases bone density by raising levels of the protein IGF-1. Researchers at Maastricht University, who looked at the question of protein's impact on bones, found no negative effects on net bone density or calcium status, regardless of the age of the subject. In fact, they found that dietary protein even increased bone mineral mass and reduced the incidence of osteoporotic fractures in the elderly. The research is clear. Nutrient-dense protein is a critical component of long-term health, fitness, and sanity. Sidebar. Grocery list. Common nutrient-dense proteins: catfish, chicken, clams, cod, Cornish hen, crab, egg whites, eggs, cottage cheese, plain Greek yogurt, grass-fed beef, flounder, haddock, halibut, ham, hemp protein powder, herring, lamb, lean conventional beef, liver, lobster, mackerel, mahi-mahi, mussels, organ meats, octopus, oysters, pea protein powder, perch, pollock, pork, rice protein powder, salmon, sardines, anchovies, scallops, sea bass, shrimp snapper, sole, squid, swordfish, tilapia, trout, tuna, venison, turkey, whey protein powder, whitefish. New heading: Nutrient-dense protein summary. 1. Nutrient-dense protein should cover a third of your plate. 2. Eat protein in 30 to 55 gram servings evenly throughout the day. 3. Eat a total of 100 to 200 grams of protein per day, depending on your size and activity level. 4. Eat protein every time you eat. 5. Eat seafood daily, ideally sources higher in omega-3s and lower in mercury, such as salmon, sardines, anchovies, oysters, etc. 6. High quality, nutrient dense sources of protein are critical. 7. If you avoid animal products, you can still be sane. Now, let's look at the final two important aspects of a sane lifestyle: whole food fats and low fructose fruits.